The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. We've been away for a couple of days because we were at the ARI conference in Garden Grove, California. We were literally just down the street from Disneyland. We were too busy to get to Disneyland, but we saw a lot of people going to and from Disneyland. And we're back. I know I promised you that we would be back yesterday and we had some other things that needed to be done, so we're back today. I've missed you and I hope that you'll take advantage and write in any questions that came up over the weekend. We've got a lot to cover today. So I want to remind you, Emily's going to show you some ways on the screen that you can get in touch with us. But if you're watching us on autism-live.com, there's a format there to type in, or you can take advantage of any of these other things. At the end, you'll see a lot of different ways that you can also be watching the show besides autism-live.com. Please participate. I can't tell you how much we value your questions. Ask whatever you want. Answer the question of the day on Facebook, but this show is for you. We're here to help all of us, myself included, parents, teachers, and practitioners, to be the best possible team member working with a child on the autism spectrum because we want them to reach their fullest potential. It's a job that we're all interested in. And by the way, if you are a young adult on the autism spectrum, we've had many of you write in and say, hey, don't forget about us because we're watching the show too. I welcome you to the show. I think the things that we're going to talk about are going to be exciting to you because it's all about living the best life that you can. We do talk about ABA a lot, applied behavior analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. But the other great news about ABA is that it's effective for literally all of us. All of our kids on the spectrum, no matter how heavily impacted they are by autism or how high functioning they are, or if we're not on the spectrum, if our children aren't on the spectrum, the rules of ABA apply to all of us. So if you're tuning in and you have a child on the spectrum, but you have another child who's not on the spectrum, this ABA stuff, it's good for that child as well. So keep that in mind as we talk about the different things. And of course, we don't just talk about ABA. We talk about the whole experience of having autism. What it's like for the family, what it's like, the stress, the financial burden, all the different things. We're here to help you find the answers that you need. That's why we're here. And I want to remind all of you, if you're new to the show, I am not an expert in ABA. I am not an expert in autism at all. Never claimed to be, and I'm not ever going to be. Let's face it, it's too broad of a topic. I'm never going to be an expert. What I am is a mom. My son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. He's 9. And he's doing so well. He's at school today. And my child who wasn't speaking, who now talks a blue streak and tells me that he's going to be a rocket engineer, and we have deep conversations. So I'm here because I understand how important this journey is to you, how important it is to help your child reach their fullest potential. I know that people along the way helped me and hooked me up with other people so that I got the help and the answers that I needed. And I always said, I'm going to do everything that I can for my child, and then I'm going to find some way to help other families. So that's why I'm here. I take that very seriously. So write in. I want to connect you with the information that you need, whatever that is. I'll hunt it down for you. Okay. We like to start every morning with something that I fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take one word, one phrase, one anagram that will come up on this journey and the journey through autism, sometimes infrequently, other times very frequently. We take that term and we give you the actual definition for it, and then we give you a working definition, something that's a little more user-friendly that hopefully you can apply to your individual child. Okay, so So this is a very interesting thing that this fell on this week. But today's anagram is FAPE, F-A-P-E. What does this mean? If you have a child who is over the age of 3, and has any kind of different needs than the typically developing child, then this is going to be the thing that you really have to understand. FAPE stands for Free Appropriate Public Education. Now, in the United States, this is the law. All of our children are entitled to this. This is their right. No matter what their diagnosis, they are entitled to FAPE, Free Appropriate Public Education. It is a term frequently referred to in IEPs, Free Appropriate Public Education, a term frequently referred to in IEPs. We need to say it twice because it's going to come up many times. Here's the thing with FAPE. When you go to an IEP meeting, and we're going to be talking about IEPs and the kinds of things that get discussed in IEPs all this week. Coincidentally, I'm having an IEP meeting on Thursday for my son. Did I set the schedule up so that we could be talking about it during this week? No, because my IEP was supposed to be last week and it got moved. Coinkydink? I don't know. The universe is telling me something. So it's a subject very near and dear to my heart this week. And we've been thinking about our FAPE, because when you go to the IEP meeting, that individualized education plan or program for your individual child, a team meets, and they have a responsibility to offer you a legal responsibility, not just a moral one. You would think a moral one would be enough, but they have a legal responsibility to offer you FAPE, Free Appropriate Public Education. So if you've been sitting there and thinking, oh my gosh, my child needs just a little bit here, or my child needs a lot here, and you've been thinking, how on earth are we going to pay for this? Is this going to mean private schools? I want you to know that the public school system in the entire United States has a responsibility to meet your child wherever they are and offer them free, appropriate is the most important word in this sentence, public education. I know the free sounds incredible, right? Like, woo, yay. But the appropriate is the word that we're going to focus on. So let's take a look at what our working definition is. It's what your child is legally entitled to in the United States. Okay. Let's tear it down a little bit. So why is appropriate the big word? Because we all need to get our heads wrapped around the fact that it is not the school's legal responsibility to give our children the best. I know, let's take a moment there, right? Don't you just go, what? We know that our child is worth the best, right? But legally, they do not have to give them the best. Legally, they have to give them what's appropriate. So we need to learn how to argue what is appropriate, and if that happens to be what's best, okay, right? But we're not going to use the word best. We have no standing. And I always tell you guys, when you go to an IEP meeting, bring the tape recorder. You have to ask for it. I say ask for it at least 48 hours in advance, because in some states it's 24 hours, in some states it's 48 hours. Don't waste time figuring out which one it is. Ask for it in writing when you get the invitation to the IEP. And if for some reason they're inviting you to the IEP without 24 hours notice, they shouldn't be. Let's say that. But if they do, say we were not given 24 hours notice of this IEP, so we're telling you that we're bringing, it's not really asking, you're telling them, I'm bringing a tape recorder. Please don't go to an IEP without a tape recorder, because things get said at meetings that are really important that you want to be able to rewind to. However, it does mean that we're being recorded too. So we want to start out just saying appropriate, and effective. Because in some dictionaries, the word appropriate, one synonym for it is effective. So you can use the word effective and you can use the word appropriate. Just don't use the word best. Eliminate it from your conversation. Maybe you have to eliminate it entirely, but at least eliminate it in the school setting. So you go in, and at the IEP meeting, at some point, each person is going to go around the room and talk about what services your child needs, and together, and they write that up in a document, the IEP plan, and they give it to you and say, here is our offer of FAPE. Now you have the ability to counter offer, and I would encourage you, if you don't think what's on that paper is appropriate, that you do. I am not a lawyer, and I would encourage you to talk to lawyers and to talk to advocates, but I will tell you that most people agree that the best course of action is to never sign the IEP document at the IEP. You have the right not to. You have to sign that you were in attendance, but you can say, I want a copy of this to go home and read over. And if appropriate, you can say, and I want to look this over with legal counsel. Schools are very aware of the fact that parents use lawyers, and sometimes they will push if they think that you're using lawyers. So you want to decide for yourself what is appropriate. I'm picking and choosing my words carefully, right? Because I have an IEP on Thursday. I think you know when you need an advocate, and I think you know when you need a lawyer. I will tell you that a lot of lawyers will give a free consultation, and you can get a lot of information at the free consultation. So it doesn't have to cost $1,008,000. Let's say that. It doesn't have to. I did not spend $1,008,008. And I was very successful in being able to argue what was appropriate and what was effective for my child and have happy outcome. Was it stressful? Yes. Did it happen just easily and I just walked in and said, here's what I want, and they said, okay? No. They filed due process against us twice. So, this, and that's, I don't know anybody else in the world that's happened to. And I tell you, so that's like worst case scenario, that they filed due process against us twice. I've never heard anybody say that, and I'm as happy as a clam, and my son's doing really well. So try to take a little bit of measure and say, whatever happens at that meeting, things can work out, so that we don't get bogged down in the moment. But I want you to think about when they give you that FAPE, that you need to put it through your filter. It's their offer. It may not be appropriate. And often parents will say that they have gotten an offer that is not appropriate. And there comes that moment, right, where you look at it and you go, oh, do I really want to fight? Is it that big of a deal? Are they going to hate me? Is the teacher going to be mean to my child as a result of me fighting? Are they going to think that I think they're stupid? I literally was looking at something today on the A word. They've just had their first IEP meeting, and they had written about, do we want to be that parent? And I wrote back, you can see my response on Facebook. I encourage you to go and look at it. I said, be that parent. Be that parent. Fight for your child. Nobody else is going to fight for your child like you do. You have to tell the school what's appropriate. And here's the thing. A good teacher and a good educator is always interested in learning more. And we have a lot to teach our teachers. I'm a former teacher. I love teachers. I think that a lot of good teachers are out there, and they'll be the first people to admit that they have not gotten the right training for our kids. And so when you give the opportunity and say, here is how we're going to do this, here's what we think is appropriate, a good teacher will step up and learn. Mediocre teachers will get mad. Our kids don't deserve mediocre teachers anyway. So what have you got to lose? Be nice, but fight. Be nice, but fight, and don't give up. Because our kids deserve what's appropriate, and when I say appropriate, I mean effective. And you certainly can sit there, and when you get an offer of FAPE, say, show me studies, show me documents that doing this is effective with a child who has the same kind of impact from autism that my child has. Yeah, that'll stop the conversation right there, because you can show them studies that doing ABA and the kinds of intervention that we talk about in this show are scientifically proven. It is a showstopper, as they say, when you put that into motion. Show me, this is what you said is appropriate. Show me data that this is appropriate. What are you basing that on? Because I'll tell you right now, they don't have it. In most cases. There are some exceptions, schools who say, here's what we want to do, and it's evidence-based. Okay, great. And then you go, I'm in the right place. If not, you're going to be part of educating your school. It's an uphill battle, but you know what? You can do it. Many of us have done it in the past, and we're here to support you. Ask questions, and we'll help you, even if it's finding an advocate and a lawyer. All right, there's FAPE. Don't get me started, right? It's like... I'm in the mode this week because IEP, you just you put on the body armor. I'm ready to go. Okay. And for my son at this point, I don't need to, but I'm just used to it. Girding it up, right? All right. We always have a question of the day. And our question of the day today is about school. What's the worst thing that has happened to your child at school? Let's get it up and out, right? Let's talk about it because there's a lot of people out there who are afraid of what's happening at school, and their gut is telling them it's not the happiest place for my child, but they haven't asked enough questions. So let's talk about it today. Let's talk about the kinds of things that happen in schools, and we've shared some stories on this program, recent stories of 9-year-olds and 11-year-olds being handcuffed and taken away. The 9-year-old who was handcuffed at school and taken into custody, and the mother couldn't see him for 45 minutes. Right? We need to talk about this stuff. We need to air it out so that everybody understands that sometimes things don't go well at school, because that's the only way we are going to see some movement on this dial, is if we all own up to it and say there's some schools that are not handling this inappropriately. I've got little warning signs here. Okay. So answer the question of the day on Facebook. We're going to drop in a little bit later and talk about some of this. We won't belabor it, but I'll encourage you guys to check out the responses on Facebook. And do me a favor, like us while you're there. We really like it when you like us. Okay, we always have a topic of the week. Can you guess what the topic of the week is? Yeah, it's autism in the classroom. We're taking it on because we have to. Now, I know some of you have said, you know what? My child this isn't going to work. This school district is not working, and you've started homeschooling. And bless you, bless you, bless you. I don't have the wherewithal to do that. I understand that for my individual child, he needs that social interaction, and I need other people to help teach him, because for whatever reason, he learns better from other people than he does from mom. I'm a teacher, and that breaks my heart. And I don't give up on teaching him. I teach him lots and lots and lots of things, but I choose my battles, right? But I know for some of you, you're taking it on and you're doing an awesome job, and I have nothing but respect for you. But for a lot of us, our kids need to be in the classroom, and that means re-educating the entire education system and paving a way for our kids to be successful. And we take it on in the amounts that we can, when we can. If you're just starting out, you need to focus on your child. But for some of us who our children are getting better, we're in this for you, trying to make it easier for the kids who are coming behind our kids. But we're going to talk about how, for all of our kids, we can set them up for success this week. Some of the different things that we're talking about today, we have a myth of the day. We've got a Halloween cooking segment, which should be very fun. We're going to look at your questions of the day, and we've got BCBA Evelyn Gould coming in with us at the top of the hour. I always love it when Evelyn comes in because she makes it better. She just makes it better. She gets it in a way that I don't know a whole lot of other people that do, and helps us to accept where we are and be productive where we are with all the stress. She doesn't say, oh, well, get over that. It's just like when when everybody has kids, it's not. So love it when Evelyn's here, and she'll be taking your questions live. So if you have questions about anything, our topic, of course, is autism in the classroom, but we talk about everything having to do with autism. So if you're seeing challenging behavior and you have questions about things, please take the time to write into the forum right now on autism-live.com, or email us, or Facebook us, or tweet us, or whatever. I'm trying to have all those screens up. We have gotten a couple of questions. One of them is about the presidential candidates. Which one supports autism causes the most? You know what? That's a really good question, and I wish that I had the answer, as do a lot of other people out there. I don't think that any of us have heard a definitive plan out of either of these candidates. I know that we have a debate tonight, and this is the last debate in which we can reasonably see the question of autism raised, because the format is split between domestic issues and foreign policy, and my understanding is that the last debate will be strictly foreign policy. So this is it. If we're going to hear it in a debate, it's going to be tonight. I want to remind everybody out there that we're putting on the pressure, tweeting both candidates' campaigns and asking them, bring it into the debate. We're a force to be reckoned with. We vote. If you want to get a ready-made tweet because you don't know what to say and where to send it to, you can go to autismvotes.org and they'll tell you some different things that you can do to get in contact with the two candidates' campaigns to say this is important, because I would surely like to be able to answer this question tomorrow. And the only way that's going to happen is if we all use our voice and tweet and email and phone those candidates and say, hey, we'd like to know, before we have to step into the voting booth. So we'll watch tonight with bated breath and see if somebody talks about it. Wouldn't that be nice? We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to take on our executive functions tip for the week. We're going to talk about disengagement. So stick with us. You won't want to miss it. Currently, in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
It just has some gases.
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable, and recovery from autism is possible.
Welcome back to Autism Live. You know, our children's ability to attend, to pay attention to something in the right amount, in the right way, is It's something that determines whether we're going to be successful at teaching something. It's something that determines whether they're going to be successful in social situations. It really has big range effects on how our child is doing, right? Because sometimes a parent will talk about the fact that their child has laser focus, that they can focus on one thing, but getting them to disengage from that to go to something else is a nightmare. That we'll see tantrums and the child literally not being able to, and that it's, you know, it's a huge battle to get them to let go of something. In other cases, the child is focused on one thing for a second, then on to the next thing, right? So we work on attention, because when we talk about executive functions things, it's one of the first cornerstones of being able to attend to things and to be able to disengage from something, to be able to pay attention to more than one thing at a time. It really is going to make a difference in how we use the building blocks of executive functions to build towards a child being able to achieve long-term goals. And if you think about it, this is really true for all of us as well. How is your attention? Which end of that spectrum are you on? Are you somebody who can really attend to something, but breaking away from it is really hard? Or are you somebody who has a hard time focusing on one thing? And it can be a combo platter, right? But we can work on building these skills for ourselves, and we can work on building these skills for our children. I know my son tends to be the kind who will focus in on something and he can get into that world of he is focused on this, especially, and I know many of you can relate to this, the idea of video games, that it's like they get sucked into the world, and getting them to come off of the video games can be a tough battle. Well, moving your attention off of one thing and onto another is what we call disengagement. To be able, like, think of it as like a tether, you know, it's that umbilical cord. So I'm attending to the video game and now I'm going to clip this and go to this. And how effectively can you do that? And of course, this is one of the habits of successful people, right? Really high-powered, get-it-done kind of people are able to put laser focus on something, but change from that to something else with no difficulties. It's a great, great skill to have for us and for our kids. So how do we begin to teach disengagement for our children? There's some things that we want to keep in mind as we're teaching, and I want to go over those first of all. One of the first things that we have to think about is that there's lots of different ways to disengage from something. It could be that it's something visual that you're disengaging from. It could be a sound. And remember that it could be a sound that you're listening to and going to a sound, or it could be going from a sound to a visual, right? But we want to learn to do this in all these different ways. We want to learn to disengage from and to vocal things, and here's a big one, disengaging from and to thought. So if somebody is sitting there thinking and they're deep in their thoughts, that they can disengage from that and go to something that's auditory. This is something that I am not necessarily good at, especially if I'm writing. I always say to my husband, you know, I'm in my right brain when I'm writing. I'm being very creative. Don't talk to me, because it's literally hard for me. If I'm writing something and somebody says something to me, I can't talk for a second. I literally have to move to the other side of my brain, and it's disconcerting for me. It's a skill that I've been trying to work on, and I've gotten better at it. Well, we can do this with our kids too. But think about for yourself, where is it that you're stronger in disengaging, and where is it that you could stand to have some work? Okay, so that we really want to teach it from all different angles when we're teaching disengagement for our child. Then we want to vary the things that we use to distract the child with all of those different things. So if, for instance, that your child is engaged in something and you're gonna rattle something to see if it's auditory, right? You want them to stop attending to the thing that they're attending to and listen to the rattle. Well, you'd never just use a rattle, right? Maybe at some point you're gonna have a horn or somebody clearing their throat or music, or that's just auditory stuff. How about flashing lights or a new toy? So we always want to be varying how we do this. We don't want to just teach it for one thing. It's not practical, right? If you're sitting in a college class and something happens and we want you to orient your attention, it could be any one of 1,000 different things, right? So we really want to plan for that kind of generalization with small small children and vary the way that we teach this. We want to set our child up for success when we begin to teach disengagement by not asking them to go. If their favorite toy is this music box that they're playing with and they're really focused on that, and we know that there's a toy over here that they really don't care for, it's a Barbie doll and they're not into the Barbie doll at all, we're not going to have an expectation on day one that they're going to go from a highly preferred activity and disengage to a highly not preferred activity, right? So we're going to flip that equation to start. So maybe in the beginning, they're playing with the Barbie doll that they don't like, and we introduce the toy that they love and ask them to shift from the thing they don't like to the thing that they do like. Over time, we're going to work towards them both being middle of the road, right? And eventually we're going to flip it on its end so that we can, after we've reinforced the dickens out of this, that at some point the child can disengage from something that's highly preferred to do something that isn't highly preferred. Think about how awesome that would be, because if the child is playing with a video game and you need them to come to the dinner table, right? How often do these kinds of things come up in real life? That we're disengaging from something we love to do something that maybe it's not aversive, but it's not as exciting as the thing that we're doing. There's a lot of that in school, right? right? So it's a muscle that we want to build really, really slowly and be really thinking of generalization, that we're not going to be able to teach this in all the many ways that we can. So we want to vary it as much as possible so that the child begins to see that this applies to many different things. All right, so let's talk about what the actual lesson, an example of a lesson, because this is a multi-step lesson, but here's our example. The child is looking at a flashing toy. The parent or teacher shakes a rattle a few inches to the left of the child and within the child's field of vision. The child disengages from the flashing toy and looks at the rattle. And we actually have a video clip to show you so that you can take a look at what this actually looks like. So take a look on your screen. I think we have that. There we go. So there's the child, and they're playing with the toy, hearing the rattle, and they turn. And so this is how we begin to, and then they immediately reinforce. But again, we're going to vary this. So take a look at, they're going to do it with a child in a different format, varying it up to see if the child can disengage, and they're going to reinforce it. Take a look at this other clip. So she's writing, and they have the other toy and they put it in her field of vision, and yes, and she bites and takes it. So, and they reinforce that disengagement. This is something that we can do with very small children, and you can see this is a very small child. And what's key here, again, in the beginning, is making sure that they're going from something less preferred to something that's more preferred. That's how you're going to set the child up for success. But what's also key is making sure that you reinforce immediately. In the beginning, it may be that the less preferred toy, and they're moving to the more preferred toy, playing with that more preferred toy, may seem like enough reinforcement, but heap the praise on and heap as much reinforcement so that as you begin to change the equation, they're still going to know, hey, it's really reinforcing to move from one thing to another. This is going to help your child with their flexibility. This is going to help your child in social situations. This is ultimately going to help your child academically. Great core skills working on disengagement. This lesson and many other lessons on executive functions and attention and teaching sustained attention and paying attention to two different things are all in the skills program. You know I love the skills program. It's what we use in my home, and it's amazing. So if you're interested in this kind of lesson, you can find it www.skillsglobal.com. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back in just a few minutes with some more exciting stuff, so stick with us.
Hi, I'm Bryce Myler, and I'm the Contracts Director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I've been here for about 5 years. CARD has several employees with many years of insurance experience, dealing with insurance, dealing with pre-authorizations, dealing with discovering whether there's coverage or not. So we have more experience than any ABA provider that I've ever come across. So for a prospective client, somebody that may be interested in, ABA therapy and what CARD has to offer, we have a special 800 number, and you call that number. They will talk to you about what we have to offer. how ABA works. He'll ask you for the front and back of your ID card, and then we check to see if you do or do not have coverage. If you have coverage for ABA therapy, we try to do whatever we can to set it up where we can bill for you and you don't have to fight with the insurance company every month to get your claims paid. For California residents, we recently did a series of insurance trainings all over the state, and you can click on the link below to watch pretty much the full presentation. It has a lot of information, how you can get your insurance company to comply with what they're supposed to do, understanding the networks, and many other valuable pieces of information.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We talk every week about healthy eating tips, and I mentioned earlier in the show that we were at the ARI conference this last weekend in Garden Grove, California, just down the street from Disneyland. That's the Autism Research Institute, and they were talking about a lot of environmental things, and of course we've talked before in the show about how important it is to choose wisely and have organic fruits and vegetables as much as possible, and to pay attention to the clean 15 and the dirty dozen. If you haven't heard us talk about that before, please Google that information. You can go to www.ewg.org. But they've given a rating of the 12 fruits and vegetables that we really need to be very careful and try to exclusively only eat them organically and give them to our children when they're organic. And then 15 fruits and vegetables that it's not as important to spend our dollars there, unless we can, unless it's financially possible. But one of the things that got talked about a lot, came up at least 3 different times at talks that I was at while we were at ARI, and I was saying to Emily Goodwin, our wonderful technical director, afterwards, I said, I don't talk about this on the show because it's one of those things that is just an understood in my household, and I think understood amongst a bunch of people, but if you don't know it, you don't know it, and we need to talk about it. So what am I talking about? Non-stick cookware. Okay, and you may be thinking, oh no, we're really going to talk about non-stick cookware? There have been studies, and you can Google them, and you can check out, again, www.ewg.org. It's the Environmental Working Group, and they do a lot of studies, and they hook you up to a lot of different studies on different materials that are in our home. And I remember when my son was first diagnosed that there was a checklist that we were given about things to consider doing right off the bat. And we talk all the time about cleaning our child's diet up, but one of the first things that we were told to do was to eliminate all of the non-stick cookware from our home. I'm sure you've heard some of the urban legends about, somebody cooking something with non-stick cookware on their stove and them having birds as pets and birds dying. It isn't so much urban legend if you read what's on EWG about it. In any case, we know that if you're cooking on non-stick cookware, and there's even precautions on most of it, that it comes with a label saying be careful in the way in which you cook it, because if it overheats, and I don't know about you, but in my house, very often things overheat. Things burn from time to time because there's a lot going on. And if there is any part of the cookware that is exposed and not covered with something that's cooking, or if it overheats, it will emit a gas that is not good for anyone. So I want to encourage you, and it took me a while. I held on to some of my pans for a while. In particular, I had one pancake griddle that I was like, look, really, you really can't make pancakes without some sort of non-stick griddle. Well, the truth of the matter is you can. And what they were encouraging, it was interesting, at the convention, at some of the different talks, they were talking about cast iron, and other people were saying stainless steel. So I'm not really sure where to go that way, and I don't know whether it's just a matter of what you prefer. But I did finally go and get cast iron. It's so heavy. Heaven help if anybody ever tries to break into our house, because it will be the thing that I get to clock them in the head with. It's a lethal weapon. It's really, really heavy. But a cast iron griddle that goes over 2 burners on the stove, and I can flip it so that it has grill marks on it. It's really a lovely thing, actually, and the pancakes come out just fine. You have to season it appropriately and have the appropriate heat on, but there's a learning curve, and then it's all good. So we are now absolutely non-stick cookware free. And I want to encourage you not to take my word for it, because I was told by a lot of people, but go to www.ewg.org and study up on it and take a look at whether it's something you want to keep in your home or whether it's something that you could do without. I want to encourage you to look at it. Let's put it that way. Okay. We also, because we love to talk about cooking here, we had the opportunity last year to go into our Autism Live test kitchen, and Emily Goodwin and I cooked up some Halloween healthy treats. And, you know, it's on a spectrum. There are some things that are healthier than others, and you have to put it through the filter of what's appropriate for your family, what's dietarily acceptable for your family. But this is pure fun. So we wanted to show you Halloween cooking ideas. Take a look. Happy Halloween. We're here today to show you some really easy, healthy recipes that you can make for Halloween with your children. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is make this lovely cauliflower brain. And the ingredients that we need for this, we need some sort of a platter. We need a cauliflower, and we have an organic cauliflower here. Emily, take it away for us.
We have some natural guacamole, some organic salsa, some potato chips, and then some pull-string licorice.
Okay, so those are all the things that we're going to need. Plus, we have a very sharp knife and a spoon. So using the knife and preparing the cauliflower can be something you can do beforehand, before you call the children in, depending on their ages and their skill level. All right, so we're going to pull the leaves off of this and put the pieces away. You can compost them if you do that sort of thing, or just throw them away. You want to remove all of the green. This part might be fun, actually, for the kids. It's a difficult one. I'm just going to slice this part off and pull some more of the green out, because there's no green on the brain. But one key thing here is that we want to slice off just the tip here so that it's going to sit flat like a brain. And this is the point where the kids can be really helpful. If you have it already measured, and that's about 1.5 cups of salt, so whatever size platter you're using, and you can have them dump it right on the plate, and that's a pretty enjoyable part of it. Swish it around. Okay, we can put the cauliflower right in the middle of it. And you can see how easy this is. Super duper easy. Has big impact if you're doing a Halloween party, but it's also having fun with your veggies, something that we want to do with the kids. And we can take the chips. I'm going to let you do that with the licorice while I throw some chips around the plate. And these, by the way, are organic, oven-fried, no-salt chips. You can use whatever you want, but we want to keep this as healthy as possible. And she's laying those laces around so they look like the veins of the brain that has gone bad. You can see it just takes a couple of minutes and you end up with this lovely, delicious, healthy brain for the children to eat. And it looks good on the table too. Tastes good too, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Awesome. Right now, what we're gonna make are hot dog mummies. These are really fun. You can see our finished ones over here. We only need a few things for this. We need some hot dogs. Right now we're using organic chicken hot dogs that are fully cooked, which is a wonderful thing. We have some mustard. We have some all-natural crescent dough on a plastic sheet that we can roll it out on. We have our rolling pin. I have a little bit of coconut flour, but you can use any kind of flour that you want. This just smells awesome. And we have a sharp knife. So this is the part of the project that we want to be careful around kids. You could use a duller knife or a plastic knife, or do this part yourself when the kids aren't around. But if you open up your refrigerated dough and you roll it out, just throw a little bit of coconut flour onto it so that it doesn't stick as much to the rolling pin, and roll it out so that you can't see the lines anymore. Oh, it smells good, doesn't it? I love the smell of coconut flour. And it bakes really a wonderful scent too into the whole house. Okay, and it doesn't have to be perfect, because the great thing about this recipe is that it's very forgiving. If the dough breaks when you're wrapping up the hot dog, it's okay, because the mummy can have lots of different bandages. All right, we're gonna go and just cut through this dough. And they can be different width strips, it doesn't really matter. And you really could do this with a plastic knife. I want to mention too that if you have dietary considerations and you need something to be gluten-free, I did this the other day for my son with a gluten-free pizza crust mix, and it worked the same. I just had to be really careful. I thought that the key to it all was getting the dough really dry while I was rolling it out and cutting it out, and then wetting it before I wrapped it around the dry hot dogs. Okay, so I'm gonna take one hot dog and Emily's gonna take another, and part of the fun of this is that you want to make like a little hat so that there is a place later on to put eyeballs made out of mustard. So you can wrap it around the head, make like a turban for your mummy, and then start to, and you see it broke. Doesn't matter, because it's dough and it can be a separate bandage. It's not a problem. You just wrap it around. The kids love this because they know they're going to get to eat it later on. It's very healthy and a quick dinner that makes it really fun. You just slather it on. And then we're going to bake it for about 12 to 14 minutes at a 350-degree oven. See, easy. He's got a head. Oh, yours is so much prettier than mine. She's Martha Stewart. Okay, so we're going to put that into the oven. We don't need to do anything else. And I put it on some parchment paper so that I don't have to use any kind of spray or oil or anything and add ingredients. We're going to stick it into the oven, and through magic, this is what they look like when they're done. And the other fun element of this is that then you take the mustard and you can give it to the kids for them to put eyes right on, and Emily's going to do that. Awesome. And if you want bloody mummies, you can include ketchup. So, those are big eyes. The other day when I did this with my son, he wanted to put sliced olives on top of the mustard for eyes. But you can see that these are cute, they're tasty, and really healthy. Those are mummy hot dogs. And you can write Happy Halloween in mustard if you're Martha Stewart. Very good.
All right, we're gonna move on to some spooky spider cupcakes. So what you're gonna wanna do is bake a box of regular brand cupcake, or they have gluten-free, sugar-free options as well.
Awesome ones, yes.
Which are great. I pre-made these cupcakes standard. Cupcake rules apply. You'll need some eggs and some oil and water. But we've gone ahead and done that already. So what you wanna do is take some chocolate frosting, and we're gonna frost our cupcake with a thin layer. Doesn't need to be too crazy.
Ooh.
Yes.
Smells good too.
Does smell good. And then we brought some blue sprinkles, and these are naturally colored with vegetable juice, correct?
Vegetable juice, blue.
Which is fantastic. And so these are blue, and then we're gonna just sprinkle the top of our cupcake here.
Awesome.
For eyes, I just got some jelly beans here of different colors. You can use M&Ms or whatever you're more comfortable using. And all you want to do is split your jelly bean in half. So there's your eyeball, Shannon.
Awesome.
I'll have orange eyes on mine. And then you're just going to place them in the front of the cupcake. And then for their little scary legs, we've got some pull and peel Twizzler here, but they also sell natural candy rope, which you can use as well. So then we're just going to pull off our little legs, and the cupcakes are soft enough where you can actually stick the little leg right into it.
And you're just jamming them down?
Just jam them in there.
Alrighty. Ooh, look at that leg.
And this is a good time to teach your kids about bugs and that they have 8 legs.
That's a great thing to add to the lesson. And you know, there's lots of different other things too. Like I have frosting on my hands, and sometimes kids don't like that. It's a flexibility issue. But this is a wonderful way in which to work on those things so that You know, they can take those skills with them later on. If it's at home and it's a little bit of frosting with you, it's a little bit more reinforcing because it tastes good than if they're on the schoolyard and it's mud and things like that.
And then once you're done, you have your little 8-legged friend.
Mine looks like he needs a haircut, but but they're very fun and they taste good and the kids will enjoy working on these.
That's right, and they're super cute.
They are. And that's Halloween. Healthy and fast and fun. Welcome back. And so there we have it. Halloween. I hope you guys will take what is useful to you and amend it the way you need to for your individual cooking needs. We had a lot of fun doing that. So much fun watching it because we haven't seen it in a while. But I hope that you guys will take the time to do something with your kids and go into the kitchen with them. It's so important that we make food fun. Don't you agree? Because if it's not fun, then, you know, we're not going to get our kids to eat the way in which we want. I think we can all agree on that. All right, we have to take a quick break because I was so busy watching that I didn't prep the next thing. My bad, but we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back to look at your answers, to the question of the day. So stick with us.
My son.
My son.
My brother.
My daughter is one of the
1 in 88 children on the autism spectrum.
I have autism.
I have autism.
I have autism, and I want you to see me as an individual.
And not as a label.
I want to find out why my brother has autism.
I want the government to say that autism is a public health crisis.
I need to know who will take care of my child when I'm gone.
I want to know what treatments.
What solutions are out there for my child?
We need insurance reform in all 50 states.
I want autism to be an unavoidable topic for those running for office this fall.
I want my students to be
safe in school.
I want the bullies to leave me alone.
Autism Speaks encourages all Americans to ask candidates, how will you make a difference for those living with autism?
I want a Senate.
A president. A Congress that recognizes autism
as an urgent public health
crisis it is.
I want our lawmakers to listen.
Make your voice heard this election. Visit autismvotes.org.
Welcome back. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that clip too, because that's the 1 in 88 video that we've been telling you. Go to autismvotes.org. Find out how to be a part of the October surprise today more than any other day, you guys. Today is the last presidential debate, and if we don't have our voices be heard and let these candidates know that we want them to talk about autism tonight. I know I've had people tell me, well, you know, there's so many things to talk about. Yes, there absolutely are. But 1 in 88, 1 in 54 boys, I'm sorry, it needs to be talked about. It absolutely does. And if you agree with me, if you don't, that's fine. You don't have to do it. But if you agree with me that it needs to be a part of this discussion, then please go to Autism Votes. Click on that video and watch it. Send it to other people for them to see. But also take the time. All you have to do is copy and paste their tweet, put it up there, and let them know. And if you don't want to go to Autism Votes, it's on our Facebook page as well. And you know what? I'll repost it when we're done with the show so that it's up a little bit closer to the top. Okay, are we asked a question of the day? We do every day, and our question today, horrible little question, right? But I think it's important for us to share our stories. It's how we learn and grow. What's the worst thing that has happened to your child at school? All right, let's read some of these things. Over the weekend, somebody was describing their child being taken away in handcuffs. And we talked earlier about the child that happened to just 2 weeks ago. So somebody wrote in and said it was a very horrific time, still affecting us a year later. I thought an autism-specific program would finally be professional enough to get my son an education so that she may learn to read and write with autism supports, but I was wrong. And there is a link, and you can go to it on Facebook, about what happened to her child. So I won't go into all of that, but you guys can look at it and see and go to the link and see, and they're suing for damages. Another person who says one twin was spanked by the teacher. Oh, that just makes me so mad. The other was overheated due to being locked inside a tube slide by a teacher and a paraprofessional, and he passed out. Oh my goodness. I hope you guys get legal help for these kinds of things. That just gave me palpitations. Another person who said, I admit this isn't as bad as some of the horrific things I've heard and read over the years, but my daughter has always been the good, quiet kid in class for the most part. So the worst thing that has happened to her is that she's been ignored and put in the corner with coloring things while the teacher has dealt with behavior issues of other kids. And you know what? I'm so glad you wrote that in, because we talk about these horrible atrocities. A child being locked in a sliding tube, which is just absolutely amazing to me, right? And I hope and pray that it's been made possible so that no other child has to have that happen, right? And we hear these things and we go, oh my goodness. But there are other things that happen on a daily basis, like our child being neglected or our child being put in a corner with too few expectations and just not being dealt with. And it's important that we acknowledge that there is a spectrum of this inappropriate behavior, and putting your child in the corner to color while the teacher has to deal with other behavior issues isn't appropriate. Not appropriate at all. You know, we talked about FAPE earlier, and one of the things, we've had Dr. Michael Dorsey on the show before, and oh my goodness, is he delightful. He runs the program at Endicott College, and I encourage you to look at some of the clips that we've had with him. One of the pieces of advice that he gave to parents dealing with the school, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this during the coming week, but he suggested that if we were seeing things that we didn't want to see or weren't sure what was happening at school, to request of the school to give a schedule of our child's day in 20-minute increments, and to ask which one of their IEP goals they are working on during each one of those 20-minute increments. Because coloring in the corner with no supervision and no one talking to her, I'm just going to guess that is not on her IEP. And yet these things happen. These things happen with our kids. So I thank you for writing in and reminding all of us. Another person wrote in and said, you know, how horrible the whole thing of being blocked. Absolutely terrible. Somebody else said, my daughter was dragged across a rug, and my son was once hit so hard on his head you could see the handprint on the side of his head. This was back in 2006 and 2007. You know, just got to keep breathing, right? We all have to keep breathing. If anyone leaves a mark on your child ever, including us, that is abuse. That's actionable. And again, I hope you guys get legal help and support with these things, because you need it for your child, but we all need it for all the children that will come into contact with those professionals. And I use that term very loosely for those kinds of people. There are lots of good people in the classroom, and we all acknowledge that, but sometimes the wrong people are in the classroom. Another person who says, when my son came home with his face swollen, and a couple of days later he got hit in the head with a rock. Oh my goodness. We aren't going to be able to read many of these, but they're all on Facebook for you guys to look at. These are the kinds of things that people are reporting happen in the classroom. Another person who expresses their outrage about that happening, all of these things, but say that their son was instructed to pick up a piece of paper from the floor by a substitute teacher. The son ignored the sub, so the sub blocked the door and had the aide remove the kids from the classroom, calling extra staff in. The teacher from next door brought in a restraint harness, and my son got scared. He took the harness from her and tried desperately to hide from the group coming after him. When they put their hands on him, he would fight them off, kicking and trying to get away. In the process, he was struck between the eyes with a blunt force, unknown exactly what. The son lost consciousness and found himself pinned on the floor on all limbs. He was refused medical attention and was sent home on the bus. They say that it was 15 minutes later, but she doesn't know if that's true. They were in and out of the hospital for head trauma because of the blunt force. And I hope, this is very lengthy and I'm not going to read the whole thing. And there's more. Oh my goodness, there's more. I hope you have a lawyer. I hope you have a lawyer. She does say, my son knows that this type of treatment will not be tolerated, and I hope that he can learn to readapt to emotional security in time. He still has spells of disorientation and confusion from the concussion, and it breaks my heart to see him go through the after effects of head trauma. I still see a bright future for my son on his own level if he can ever overcome the past with a new beginning in time. I now learn myself what to look out for in the schools, to better observe and communicate. No more will a school deny my active monitoring because I made a promise to him that this will never happen ever again. I will be that shadow he needs through this. I also learned that in disabilities, that teacher notes to a parent about behaviors should have immediate IEP behavior support plan put in place. Amen to that. We can all learn from that. Even if ignoring and avoidance are the issues at home, we have an autism-friendly environment with plenty of educational reinforcers. I expect the same for school as well. And you know what I love about this? I really, something horrible has happened and the after effects are with your child, but that you have something that you've learned from it and that you're sharing with all of us. And I think that's absolutely true, that anytime there is behavior and you've gotten a note from it, please request for an FBA, a functional behavior assessment, and for the team to meet to come up with a behavior intervention plan. And I know that there are lots of times that the behavior intervention plan is in place and people don't follow it, but that's the first line of defense, is that the behavior intervention plan is in place, and then we make sure that they know how to implement it and that we have a plan for if there is a substitute. That's our first line of defense. So we get that by asking if a note comes home that there's been behavior, ask for an FBA, a functional behavior assessment from a board-certified behavior analyst so that you can make a behavior intervention plan. Speaking of board-certified behavior analysts, we're going to take a break now to watch The A Word. This is the amazing documentary that's been being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And when we come back from The A Word, we're going to be joined by Evelyn Gould, board-certified behavior analyst. So we can talk about some of these different things that happen in the classroom, but also answer your questions. Now is a great time to be writing in on our forum on autism-live.com to tell us what you want to know more about. But take a look at The A Word. They're following Jack Riley. He is a 2-year-old, been diagnosed with autism. He is about 8 weeks into ABA therapy at this point. And again, there's progress, but it isn't all happy flowers and roses. Let's take a look at what's going on with Jack Riley today. This is The A Word.
I started to think he's smarter than me.
Imitating?
During clinic, everyone on Jack Riley's team meet at CARD headquarters. Here, parents, supervisors, and therapists go over any questions, concerns, and new skills to be taught.
I think we have. You're getting along. Look how cozy he is with you guys now.
He's
gonna lean on her knee.
He's leaning on you. We were having him give us fire truck and then having him say it afterwards, but now we're realizing he knows a lot, so now we can just hold up the picture and say,
What is it? Jessica is determining what items Jack Riley knows the labels for. Items he does not know are separated to be taught to him during a later therapy session.
The vegetable. Papa.
Is that right?
Papa.
Oh, that's right. Oh, you gotta call your dad.
Oh,
What is this?
Oh,
he doesn't know that one. What is it?
table.
I think you should let him go on that
one. Oh my goodness. That's good. Woo!
That was good.
That was awesome.
Okay, last one, okay? And then you can play. What is it?
You're just making stuff up now.
Yay!
You did such a good job. That table came out perfect.
That was.
I couldn't find like a good table that looked like something
Papa,
you would
is this
know,
Papa?
so I was pretty surprised.
That-
That's Papa.
Oh, he said Papa
That's,
too.
that's,
That was awesome.
He said you sent all. There's a couple pictures of him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he got it.
Absolutely.
Papa's gonna be happy.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, of course, we're getting big heads thinking he's doing so well. He's getting such a big vocabulary. I know we're not supposed to compare him to other kids, but because you guys work with other kids with autism, what are, and I know this isn't an easy answer, but easiest answer you can come up with.
Okay.
What are his strengths and weaknesses?
I would definitely say one of his biggest strengths is that he's able to learn and he learns very quickly. You know, I mean, he's at a good place right now where he's sort of like shooting up everything, you know what I mean? And
Excited.
yeah, and he's picking things up very quickly. You know, as far as what are his weaknesses, I think it's just the deficits that he has. It's just the delay in the language and the delay, you know what I mean? And it's all that stuff. But given that he is a fast learner, I think all that stuff is just coming out.
He's getting more words, but really they're, for the most part, like other than the table and things like that, they're more approximations. That, or are we just recognizing the consistency more often now?
He's making a connection of words to an item or a person or something.
Right.
We can always work on your
I see him. I see
articulation.
recognition in him. That's.
You want hickory dickory dock? Say no.
No.
Okay. So you can see which one you want. That goes. You want trains? Trains? Do you want trains? Trains? Say trains. Okay, here. Let's go play with the trains. We got these. What color is this?
Red.
Red. Very good. You know your colors. What color is this?
Red.
Try again.
Oh.
Yellow. Very good. Here we go.
Blue.
There you go. That's what I was waiting for. Sit up and do it though. Okay. Yeah. Let's do it like this. Choo-choo. What's up? Do it this way though. You gotta sit up though and do it. Hey bud. You gotta sit up and do it. You can't lie down and play. You can play still. Do you want to play? Do you want to play? Then you need to play right. Okay? Sit down and play. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jack. You can play still.
Oh.
Uh-oh. That's okay. Here, you have one more. Let's go. Hey, you gotta sit up though. Sit up and then you can play. Okay.
We see Jessica repeatedly redirect Jack Riley to sit up each time he attempts to lay down and play. The reason she does this is that laying down while playing is inappropriate, and if we don't teach appropriate play skills, he won't be able to socialize with other children. This teaches him how to play, and that tantruming or negative behavior won't get him what he wants.
Sit down. Thanks for sitting. That was good sitting. Thank you. Oh, okay. Sit down though. Thanks. Hey, do this. Good job. Do this. Good job. Okay. Do you want Peekaboo Wild? Want Peekaboo Wild or Peekaboo Barn? Which one do you want? Which one do you want? Here, you pick which one. The Peekaboo Wild? Uh-oh. Oh, shoot, that's not it. Here. Okay. do this. Yay! Good job. All the way though. Stand up. Like this. Yeah. Okay, try again. Ready? Jack Riley, do this. There it is. All right. Okay, let's have it face you. Who's that? That's Jack. Is that you? Yeah, that's you. Who's that? That's me. That's Jessica. Can you do this? Yeah, good job. Can you do this? You do. Yeah, there you go. There's your tongue. I was messing around with him the other day with my forward-facing camera just to see him make funny faces to each other. He really imitated. So.
But with the camera, not with
with the camera, but not face to face. Yeah. Which is interesting. It's really interesting. Yeah. But like face to face, you can do like the gross motor NBI, where I do this and he claps, or I stand up and he'll do the same thing. But facial stuff, no, he won't. Shit, that's right.
Welcome back. That was the A Word, the documentary that's being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And while you were gone, we brought in the lovely and fabulous BCBA. Well, it's coming. It's coming. So I immediately go to the doctor. But BCBA, Board Certified Behavior Analyst Evelyn Gould, thank you so much for being here with us today. I so appreciate you being here. And I wanted to take a second to talk about, there were some things in the video that I wanted to address, because we see this little boy who has started, he's about 7 weeks into ABA therapy at this point. And we see them in a clinic setting. And you saw the moment when they were probing some things with him, and then he was done. And so he was released to get to go play, right? And so his way of playing, that he walks over to the dump truck that's got a bunch of blocks in it, and he starts tossing a salad. That's what he's doing. That's his way of playing. And then they give him a doodle pad, and he's doing this, and he's, but he's not even attending to what he's doodling on. And they're talking about other things, but I love that the filmmaker left those in so that we got to see this is where this little boy is with play. Then a little bit later in the video, they show, it's really the first time in the series that we're seeing him have a negative reaction to something that's happening with ABA. That he's sitting there playing with his train, and he's loving the train, absolutely loves it, but what does he do? He tips over, so he's laying on his side, and he's looking at the cars of the train like this. And what does the therapist do? She sits him up and says, sit right, or whatever it is that she says to him. And, he's a little disconcerted by that, but he goes right back down to watch the car in this way, and she sits him back up. And the third time that he does it and she sits him back up, he has a tantrum. And it lasts 20 minutes. And the thing that I want to talk about is that this kind of thing is not unusual with autism at all. And as parents, there's a whole bunch of things that you see earlier in the video where they show him a picture of a table, and he says, and then he says table, and everybody goes, yay, this is wonderful. And we celebrate those kinds of things, but at some point we're going to run into something where the child goes, no, I'm used to doing it this way, I don't want to do it that way, I'm going to express myself by crying. And when it's around play, as a parent, we go, can't you just let him play that way? Like you're doing all these things with him, and you're making him sit up and have to learn all these things that are hard for him, and he's doing so. Can't you just let him play the way he wants to? And we get into this emotion of, man, why don't you cut him some slack? But the video talked about why we can't. And I want to talk about why we can't, but more importantly, I want to talk about what we can do as parents when we're feeling like that. Because maybe we're not seeing the big picture.
No, probably not. And you're reacting to what's going on right now and not thinking about where you're trying to get to with your kid. And play is very important.
It is.
I mean, for various different reasons. We want the kids to be able to play appropriately so that they can fit in at school or so on, so that they can interact with peers. But there's a lot of things that happen when typical kids play, that it brings them into contact with lots of new learning experiences. And so that's why we want to teach kids how to play appropriately, so that they can start contacting those new kind of learning experiences and so on.
Yeah,
It's really important.
And ultimately, if they contact new things, there's a possibility that those things will be reinforcing to them. So you find new reinforcers, new areas of interest, and new things that you can teach as a result of that. But I think, you know, one of the things that I was reminded of very often, and yet I forget it on a daily basis, that certainly I used to, our kids don't necessarily find play as we think of it as reinforcing.
Yes, yeah, that's very true.
And what we saw Jack Riley doing, that tossing the salad with the blocks, I mean, that was so my child. My child saw a pile of papers, and that was what was exciting to him because there was something cool about the way it looked. That was reinforcing to him, but playing appropriately was work.
Right. Well, yeah, that's absolutely right. But one of the arguments might be that the kids don't automatically find playing appropriately reinforcing it, but through teaching them skills so that they can do it, then it starts to become reinforcing, and by pairing it with other things, it will become reinforcing, and then you find that kids will gravitate towards things and start playing appropriately.
Yeah. Give me an example of when you pair it with something else.
Well, obviously when we teach our kids things, we tend to reward them little steps along the way, either with other things that they do like. So it might be pairing it with, so they do something that we want them to do, and then we'll give them access to something they really like. So it could be, if your kid really likes books, then you're going to be like, we're going to play with the trains, or do 3 things with the trains and then read a book.
Right.
Or it could be also, if praise or some kind of physical social game is reinforcing, then you get them to do something, and then you're going to like wiggle their arms or cheer or whatever it is that they find rewarding.
Yeah, you guys have that wiggle arm thing. There's a whole little song too that's hilarious to me. So not assuming that the play by itself is going to be reinforcing. You're pairing it with something else. Okay, and so all of it is important. This is why we have to teach appropriate play skills. And they talk in the video about eventually they want it. He's not developmentally or age-wise. He's not at the point where he's going to. Right now, he's still. It would be age appropriate for him to play next to somebody, not playing with them. Parallel, yeah, that's what they call it.
So like beside another child, so you're not interacting directly with the other child beside you. You're both just playing alongside each other.
And that's. At this age, that would be appropriate for him to play, but they have to get him ready for when he's going to interact, and not have him be behind. And if he's laying down while the other kids are sitting up, it's not going to happen.
Right. I think there's 2 things. I mean, he's going to draw attention to himself. That's not really the type of attention that we want.
Right.
And he's isolating himself in the sense that he's not going to attract children to interact with him. He's not going to be very reinforcing to them, so they're probably going to stop trying to interact with him. And then he's missing out on all those learning opportunities and all those socialization opportunities because he's not able to play with them appropriately.
And I think it's important because when your child is 2 and 3 and 4, and you're like, well, we're not even developmentally at the point where this is really involved, and you see your child crying, and you're like, you want to make it better now. But I want to remind everybody that if you give in to that, what it leads to is all of us who have the 7 and 9 and 10-year-olds who go, I really wish my kid had friends. We have to plant these seeds way back when. So how do we put that all in perspective for ourselves emotionally when our child is crying, Evelyn?
Well, I mean, it's also hard because you're battling with the idea that you're forcing your child to be someone he's not, or something like that. I know sometimes that comes up. It's like, well, what's wrong with what if he just wants to do that? That's okay. And why should we force him to fit into this model child?
So that he can get along with everybody else.
Why should he be forced to play in a certain way and have to interact with people he doesn't like? But what we're trying to do is ultimately the child can still do whatever he wants to do if he wants, but we want to give the child the opportunity to be able to integrate into the world and to be able to have friends and to know what to do if he does want to make friends and so on. So we want to give the child the opportunity to have those things and be able to live functionally in our world. And if the child ultimately ends up not wanting to do that, then that's okay, but he has the option to be able to do it. And what we find is once we do teach children how to play appropriately and give them the tools that they need, that they find friends reinforcing. Like they do actually start to enjoy new toys and start to want to play with toys and want to play with other people, and that happens.
So maybe if in that moment when our child is crying, if we remind ourselves that we're giving them a choice, that because at this moment in time, the only way that Jack Riley can play is by laying down and looking inappropriately.
Exactly. He doesn't have the tools, or he doesn't know necessarily how to play, and it's not reinforcing for him yet.
Right. But by teaching him, which is going to be, he's going to have emotions about it, teaching him that you sit up and allowing him to go through the emotions, and then eventually he can make a choice. What we actually see is that very quickly he chooses to interact with a therapist over laying on his side. But in this moment, he's convinced this is the only way to play.
And even ourselves know that when we first start learning something, it can be really hard and we don't really want to do it, but we know that once we've learned it, then it's very beneficial to us. Like even think about learning a language and how when you start to learn a language, it's a pain. It's a real pain, and it's tough work, and you maybe don't really enjoy it, but the benefits of knowing a second language, it just opens up these doors to you, and if you then go out and use that skill, like it's really wonderful. Or riding a bike or learning to drive. Like when you're actually learning, it can be stressful and not very fun. But once you have that freedom and that independence, then you use it to do all sorts of things. And think of all the opportunities that you come into contact with, and all the fun and reinforcement that you get that comes along with having those skills.
Absolutely. Even, when we talk about food, we like to eat the food that we like to eat. And when somebody introduces a new food, especially to kids, but sometimes to adults, I think about my husband. I talk about my husband a fair amount on the show. My husband is not the fan of fruits and vegetables that I wish he were. But when we started dating, he had not eaten a fresh apple in like a decade. I know, how horrifying is that, right? But I was eating an apple, and I said, we'd gone someplace on a picnic, and I brought him an apple, and he was like, I'm not so much into the fresh fruit kind of thing, which I don't understand. I just completely don't get that. And he was really hesitant about it, but, he's an adult and I'm an adult, and I said, okay, well, whatever, but you're really missing out. And he felt like because we were dating, he needed to make an effort, and so he took a bite out of the apple, and he said, this is really good. Like, I had no idea. I had forgotten how good a fresh apple was. And so sometimes we have to try new things. And for our kids on the autism spectrum, we are going to encourage them on a daily basis to try new things, and they're going to have emotions about it. And we're going to have emotions about them having emotions about it. I mean, it makes me want to cry even thinking about it, because you feel helpless and like all your power is gone. But we need to remind ourselves it's okay. It's okay for us to have those emotions. It's okay for them to have those emotions, but nothing bad is happening, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I want to explore that more and some other topics, but it makes me well up, because I can remember thinking, this is so hard for him. Do we really have to do it? But we do.
Yeah. I mean, the unknown and being a beginner is always just so hard.
Yeah, it is. Beginnings
really, really
are hard. Beginnings are hard. Ends are hard. Middles are more comfortable.
Yeah. And remember, we talked about how when you're having those emotions, it's likely that there's a value there, and if you can figure out get your compass out, that really helps.
Well, and we were at a conference this weekend, and we got to talk to a lot of parents, and it was very emotional for me, because people talking about where they are and the things that they're trying to work through, and the obstacles that they're encountering, and it was just, I don't know, it was so overwhelming to me, because I know how hard those phases are, and how important it is, and the amount of energy it takes to slog on, especially when your child isn't having a good day. Super duper hard. But the one thing that somebody said to me that I repeat all the time, because it made so much sense to me, was that if you go to the value, if you take the compass point and say, I want to help my child to have as few obstacles as possible, if that's the value, because when our kids were learning how to walk, for most of our kids, they fell down a lot, and sometimes they even hit their head or hurt themselves, and they cried frustration. And we never said to them, well, enough of that. We're done. We're giving up on that. Forget it. It's not worth it. I'm not allowing you to be hurt in this way. We wouldn't even conceive of that. And what I was told was, when I see my child struggling with learning something, to think the same thing of, okay, well, you hit your head, and I'm sorry that you hit your head, but we're not giving up on this. We're not giving up on you. And so that's the thing that I tried to remember. I cried. I cried at the door. And every time, still, when he struggles with something, I think I have a harder time than he does.
I think how many kids, parents who have to take their children to school, for the first time, and the child doesn't want to go, and they cry and they cry and they cry and they cry and they cry, and it's heart-wrenching to watch. But ultimately, you have to go to school, and you're going to have to get through this, and you have to get through it as a parent. And because in the long term, my child needs to go to school and have an education and socialize with other children, and you have in your head this goal that you're trying to get to, and you get yourself through that. And also, but in that circumstance, you're also there with a ton of other parents who are having to do the same thing. Whereas when you have your child with autism, it can feel very lonely.
Yes.
And you probably feel like a beginner the entire time without anyone else to kind of say to you, this is what it feels like. It can get better, and it's okay.
And it's gonna get better, absolutely. Well, it's interesting that you brought up classroom, because that's our topic this week, is autism in the classroom. And we've had some people write in some things today about things that have happened in the classroom. So we're gonna take a break, and we're gonna come back with BCBA Board Certified Behavior Analyst Evelyn Gould and talk about things in the classroom, and maybe how we can help our kids to be more successful getting out the door and going to school on a given day in the proper mindset. So stick with us.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something, and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here right now with our very special guest, BCBA Board Certified Behavior Analyst Evelyn Gould. And we've been talking about sometimes it's hard when our child has a reaction to something that's happening, and they meet with frustration because we're trying to teach them something, and it's really difficult, and we have to deal with those emotions.
I think it's really, even as a therapist, it's very hard, Shannon. When you are trying to teach a child a new skill and they're really having a hard time. Like I can think of like a little boy, this springs into my mind, where he was eating, he wouldn't sit at the table, and there was a whole bunch of difficult problems around that, and the parents had the mom was okay. She really was like, okay, we need to have him able to sit at the table and eat, whereas dad was kind of like, I can't deal with this, what's the big deal, I'll just let him pick at stuff and run around and eat in front of the TV and all this kind of thing, but it really was creating a lot of problems, so we did work on it. But he was very, very upset when we first were like, no, you have to sit at the table and you can't you either eat your dinner at the table or you don't. You know, we had like a whole plan in place, but he was very, very distressed, and it's very hard because you have to remind yourself that you're doing the right thing, and that's just as a therapist or a professional who's not a parent emotionally involved. So I can't even imagine how hard it is to stay in touch with your value of I'm doing the right thing and this is going to help my child have a better life in the long run and be able to make choices for himself and be independent.
But I think that one of the keys is knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think it does help knowing that these kinds of interventions are evidence-based, they work, because we don't want to be doing things that don't work, and that you're constantly evaluating what's working and how it's working. And I think that that can help. I do think whenever in pain, I always use the example of, you know, I had my son cesarean, but I'm told that one of the most painful things that there is in this world is birthing a child in the traditional way. And yet I'm told by so many women that as painful as it is, that, and you're frightened because there's things going on and you want to make sure that the baby is okay, you understand that the pain is from something that should be happening. So it is not as horrifying and as terrifying as if you suddenly have a chest pain and you don't know what it is. So, you know, we're not saying negate the emotion. Everybody's having the emotions, but if you understand why the emotions are happening and why it's difficult and what the purpose of what you're going through is, then it hopefully isn't as devastating. But still, you're going to have emotions. It's not like it goes, well, we're all happy and, you know, I'm watching my child be frustrated and crying and it's okay with me. No. That's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. So I think trying to struggle and fight and convince yourself that it's fine is kind of a waste of your energy.
And that's what I love about you coming in here. It's like, well, the emotion is there. Let's not try to pretend it's not.
No.
But let's see how we can, you know, cope with everything else that's happening and not be mired in the emotion. Because I think that that's really important too. And we don't want to be, you know, I know it was told to me very early on when we started ABA, I had the baby monitor, the visual, video, and audio so that I could hear everything that was going on. And I think that that's important for a parent so that you can see when your child is crying exactly what's happening, to know that your child is not having anything untoward happening. You know, it's usually a very patient person who's sitting there and just not allowing your child to do something that they want to do. So nothing bad is happening to your child, and to be able to visually see that is very calming. But also having an understanding, and we were told very early on, and I don't know that this is the case for everybody ABA, but that if we were to intercede, that what we do in that moment, if I was to come out and say, stop what you're doing, what I will have taught the child is if I yell loud enough, long enough, mommy will save me and I'll never have to learn anything from this person. So in that moment when you're standing there, you got to suck it up.
And thinking about, am I doing what's best for my child, or am I just trying to escape the uncomfortableness that I am going through right now? Am I trying to, like, and a lot of the time you're reacting to your own stuff and not to what's happening with your child or what you're doing, what's going on right now, you know. And you're reacting to like a whole history of feelings about yourself as a parent. What am I doing to my child? Am I doing the right thing? Blah, 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 blah. Is he going to hate me? Like all this stuff. You're reacting to that and not to this one moment of what's going on.
That's exactly it. That it's uncomfortable for us, and we don't want to be uncomfortable as much as we don't want our child to be uncomfortable.
It's the same as when you're in the supermarket and your kid's having a meltdown and people are looking at you and going, and all these things, and you're usually reacting to escaping from that as opposed to what am I trying to teach my child right now.
Yes, it really does come down to that, what's most important in this moment. But emotions tend to be loud.
Oh, very loud. And they scream louder and louder the more you try and ignore them. That's why I'm saying don't try and ignore them, because it's like an extinction burst going in your brain.
Exactly.
It's going to be very difficult to not react to that extinction burst. And I think making room, we talk about making room is the best thing, is to like face it and acknowledge it and make room for it and try to then get in touch with the value, which is all very easy to say, especially when you're in a moment and you're trying to make a decision in the moment as to what to do, but that's ultimately what you know, if you can practice doing that, then it should become easier.
But I have to say, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, about the idea that when you're having a big emotion, and a lot of times emotions are big, that if we can say to ourselves, okay, it's because there is a core value at stake here.
Something really matters to me.
Something really matters to me. And if we can boil it down and go, what is the core value right here? And I said to you then, okay, that's life-changing. And it has been. In the last 2 weeks, there have been several times that, because a lot has gone on in the last 2 weeks for me personally, and there have been several times that things have happened, and my husband and I have been using that and saying, okay, but what's the core value here? And once you boil it down to that, everything is infinitely easier. Infinitely easier.
And I also just think that there's some weird paradoxical thing about making room for an emotion. Like, you think it's that big that if you make room for it, it gets bigger, but ironically, when you make room for it, it seems to be less overwhelming. And then you feel, it's like when I take a big breath and make room for a feeling that I've been running away from, and suddenly it's like, okay, I don't know, it just seems like there's room for other things. It's very strange. It's a very strange
paradox. Well, but it's very true. I mean, if you stop and think about when you feel like you're on the verge of tears and you're trying so hard not to cry, trying so hard not to cry, and when you finally get to a place where you're like, okay, I'm going to cry, and you cry for 20 seconds to a minute, and it's over. It's over, because our bodies really can't cry for long periods of time. I mean, they've done studies on that.
No, it's going to
wear
stop.
out.
And it's very strange that we spend so much time trying to suppress, and I know myself, like, I run away from crying, and then I have a cry, and then I'm like, oh, now I feel so much better. Why did I not do that? Why did I not do that a week ago?
Right.
It's like, it's very...
And I think it's a good thing for our kids, too, if we stop and think about it that way. I mean, I certainly wasn't raised this way, but what we did with Jem, when something would happen and he would cry, both my husband and I would be our instinct to say, okay, don't cry, don't cry. But I got information that said, don't do that. Don't do that. That's how we were all taught that's not a good thing. And I can remember one time in particular when we'd been at a place and they made this elaborate balloon sword with all these jewels on it in different colors, made out of 12 balloons, this amazing thing. And he was so happy with this. He was probably 4. So thrilled with this balloon sword. We went to get in the car and he hit it on the top of the car, and it was like the whole thing popped, and there was, all these balloon threads. I have never seen a child, I mean, tears, they talk about crocodile tears shot directly out of his eyes, and he just sobbed. And my husband said, all right, it's just a balloon, it's okay. And I said, no. He should be sad. It's a sad thing. Let's let him cry. Let's see how long it takes. It was over in a minute and a half. In a minute and a half, and then he was okay. But I know other times when we've been like, it's all right, it's just it takes half the day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
fighting against it. Sometimes.
Yes.
Like, I do think to an extent our bodies physically know what to do, and so we wouldn't have devised crying if it wasn't purposeful, or if it was going to cause us damage. That doesn't make any evolutionary sense. So
I love that.
So I feel like our problem is our brains and our verbal behavior that we've developed, this ability to talk to ourselves and chatter, and our brain just generates this constant chatter, and that interferes with us just letting things be there, just letting emotions be there, making space for them, and working through them.
Yeah.
We just end up trying to talk ourselves out of them, trying to problem solve them, and you can't problem solve an emotion. It's not like trying to figure out how to open a stuck door. It's not the same thing.
It's not.
You're wasting your energy. It's very interesting.
Letting them be and making room for them. Really amazing stuff.
Stay with the feelings or something. I don't know.
Yes,
I hear people saying that.
Own them. Own the feelings.
But also not perseverating on them. It's about making room for them, and not perseverating on them, because that's not helpful either, because you just end up going round and round in circles again. I guess when you're perseverating, you are still brain kind of talking about it, or trying to solve it in some way by analyzing, which just doesn't get you anywhere.
Absolutely. But making room for it, I love that. We're going to take another break, and then we are really going to come back and talk about autism in the classroom. We really are. So stick with us.
Sidetracked.
Can you say hello? Say hello.
AJ? Stop crying.
AJ, let's eat. Can you eat, AJ? Let's eat, son. Have a fry. My understanding of autism was very limited.
He would lick tires on cars, windows, you name it. And so we went to the 13-month checkup, and I remember our pediatrician, he said, well, he probably has autism. There's nothing you can do about it. Come back in a year when he's 3.
Our initial understanding of what the ABA program was basically all we picked up from this clinic in San Antonio.
He didn't pick up any signs the entire 8 months that he was there. I think the difference came when we changed vendors.
We were very impressed with the way that CARD actually gathered data to be able to quantify the progress that he was making. They have a curriculum that they follow that's tailored to each child. They were identifying AJ's strengths and weaknesses.
We were finally starting to see real progress.
Good, AJ. Here's eggs.
The first thing CARD did for us was, I remember the first time AJ said, "Mommy, I want you." And that was the most wonderful thing ever. There's hope.
Yeah,
That's when I knew that there was hope. I never thought that AJ would be able to say that. It was like a gift from God. It was so fantastic.
With CARD, we got him enrolled in a private school.
And he was in a typical classroom. He would go from activity to activity. He could sit when he was supposed to sit. He could be around typical kids. The goal is for CARD to work themselves out of a job. It's for AJ to be in a mainstream classroom with no help, and he's functional and he's learning. We're really grateful to all of the therapists. AJ would not be where he is without them, and we will never be able to repay the part of themselves that they gave to him to make his life better and to make our lives better.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our special guest today is BCBA Board Certified Behavior Analyst Evelyn Gould. And our topic all this week is autism in the classroom. We are talking specifically right now about how we can help our kids, and really all of our kids, whether they're on the spectrum or not, to get out the door in the morning on the best possible footing to have success at school. Because part of, there's a lot of things that the school has to do, but we want to send our children the best possible space for them to be able to succeed. Mm-hmm. So how do we set them up for success in the morning? I know it's a huge topic.
Yeah, it is a huge topic, but it's a very common area that we work in.
Yes.
Lots of different things can go on. I mean, we know even with typical kids, it can be a very chaotic time getting kids out the door to school, let alone getting them out the door in a organised, calm, ready to take on the day manner. In fact, I was just thinking, I wish I could have done a better job of that this morning for myself. I very chaotically came to work and was feeling all flustered. And it does really affect, if you think about yourself, it does really affect the rest of your day.
It does.
It's so important to start off on a good foot if you can, or to start off well, because it does have a knock-on effect, and it's kind of like a momentum. You need to get the momentum going. So it's a really important thing. So, I mean, there's lots of places where there can be a breakdown from something related to sleep the night before, sleeping well, to getting your kid up out of bed, to getting your kid dressed, to getting your kid bathed, to getting your kid through all those steps, to breakfast time, getting through breakfast time, getting your stuff together, getting out the door, getting into the car. So there's a huge amount of things happening. So I think thinking about that initially, first of all, is it's like not just seeing this as one thing and that's going to school, but realizing that there's like a whole sequence of events that happen between your child waking up and your child getting into the car to go to school.
Yeah.
And so I think it can be helpful to break down your sequence of things, and then you can try to find out where there's a problem, assuming there is a problem. But if there's something, if it feels very stressful, even if you don't know that there's specific problems, but it feels like a really chaotic, stressful time for you, then this can help.
Right. So really taking it apart, unraveling it.
Yes.
Almost a task analysis on getting ready to go out the door.
It basically is like a task analysis, which is just breaking things down into a series of steps with the ultimate end goal would be arriving at school, say.
Right.
And so you're trying to break down into the individual steps and then being able to identify, well, where is the problem happening? Because once you figure out where the break in the chain is, then you can start thinking about what to do about it.
Right. So maybe not necessarily taking on the whole thing, but looking at where. I love this whole thing about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? Redoing the whole thing over from the floor up. But maybe looking and saying, okay, well, where we're having a problem is at breakfast. So what do we need to do to make breakfast work?
Yeah, or I'm having a problem getting my kid into the car, out of the house into the car.
Right.
Or maybe the problem is when the kid arrives at school and getting him out of the car. And of course, because it's like a whole sequence of events, it's likely that one thing has a knock-on effect of something later.
Right.
You know, that's very possible. So the fact that you could be like, oh, well, my kid, we have terrible trouble getting my kid out of the car when we arrive at school. But when you break it down, you might find that the source of the problem is that the kid, like we talked about that kid that I worked with who used to leave the house with toys.
Yes.
And so when he arrived at school, the teacher's having a terrible trouble with getting him out of the car without the toys.
Right.
So sometimes he would get out of the car with the toys and then they would have to take the toys off him and then he would spend the entire day trying to find the toys or trying to find where they put the toys. So it wasn't actually really getting out of the car that was the problem. It was the fact that he was earlier on in the chain somewhere, he was getting hold of some toys and bringing them in the car.
Right. And so if I'm remembering correctly, part of the intervention for that was to take the box of toys and move it away from the front door.
Yes, so we were able to figure out, I mean, actually this child that I'm talking about had a bunch of different things that were difficult for him in the morning routine. So that was one of the things that we did, was to move the toy box away. So we solved one part of the problem. We did a bunch of other things as well related to that. So it wasn't actually that simple. There was a few other things, like we had schedules in place. We put in place like a visual schedule, for example. So that's something that's very common that can help children with autism in particular, is to have a visual schedule. And that can be anything from just a first then visual. So you have, the child knows, well, first we're going to do this and then we're going to do something I like. So for this child, he really had a hard time with getting washed. So we had like, first we're going to get washed and then we get to go and eat whatever the food was he wanted for breakfast. That was really motivating for him.
Okay.
And that actually pretty much solved that problem. And then he also had a difficulty distinguishing between when it was going to be a school day and when it was going to be a weekend day. So we had to think about, well, how can we signal to him when he wakes up or the night before that tomorrow is going to be like this as opposed to like this. So we ended up doing something like hanging his school, when it was a school day, we hung up his school uniform on the door the night before, so then he knew that he was going to be getting up for school the next day, and then when the weekend, obviously that wasn't there, when it was a holiday that wasn't there, and things like that can really help. So definitely looking at, well, they're antecedent modifications, but like little signals that can help prepare your child for what's about to happen next can be very, very helpful.
It's so important, and I think we can all relate to that, because none of us likes to be someplace on a journey going someplace and have no idea where we're going.
No.
We don't. We just, none of us enjoy that, and why we all forget that our children are having the same experience of the world in some respects, that they're on a journey and that they'd like to know what's happening too.
So definitely structure and visuals and other things that you can introduce that help your child understand what's expected of them next and when things that they prefer are coming.
Yes.
And using like the first then, so trying to do one thing and then getting to do something they like, that reinforcing doing things that are harder with things that are easier or things that are more like, that kind of thing can really help. And then teaching certain skills, like if your kid has skill deficits or something that they're really struggling with, you might need to introduce some kind of teaching program. I know, Shannon, you talked about your kid just having difficulty with getting into the car. Was it getting into the car or being in the car?
It was getting out of the car.
Getting out of the car.
Getting into the car when we would go carpool. We don't do carpool so much anymore, but because we have other things to do after school. But getting out of the car when we get home. So we just had to go step by step, because the whole idea of getting his bag and everything, and the whole taking off the seatbelt, oh my goodness. But we did. We tasked it down and chained little portions of the lesson
Mm-hmm.
so that he could figure it out and I could figure out where he was having the difficulty with it. But and it changed. It literally changed.
Yeah, and like other things, thinking about your child coming to school well rested and well fed. So if you're having a lot of sleep issues or you're having diet issues or just issues related to your child's, like the child I talked about earlier who just would not sit at the table and was just running around the place, and they were having to try and coax him into getting his food, and then they're having to put food on the sofa, and it was just all very chaotic, and then he wouldn't, or if your kid takes a really long time to eat or something like that, like that can mean your child arrives at school sleep deprived and food deprived and cranky, and then you're just setting yourself up for struggling.
Absolutely.
And maybe especially if the teachers don't know, if the teachers haven't figured out there's a pattern there that your child's probably hungry or hasn't slept well, or your child has some medical issues, if they aren't well aware or they haven't realize the connection, then they aren't going to be necessarily helping that situation or knowing what to do.
Not only that, the teacher might be underfed, underslept, and 3 other kids in the classroom might be underslept and underfed, so it's having to battle all of that. But in any case, we can't control all that, but we can send our kids in the best possible footing. I've noticed, too, recently that a lot has changed as my son is 9, and we had a morning ritual that worked. And I like to lean heavily on things that work and go, good, I'm done. And then things change, and I'm always shocked and surprised that, he grew some more and things changed. And we've seen recently that we've had to amend the morning routine to address this 9-year-old boy whose tastes have changed about what he wants to do and how he wants to do them. And that's been a big shock to me. But we've noticed, because usually my son would wake up and would be very, very sunny. But we're getting ready for the tween years.
Adolescent.
Yes. And, and the things that used to draw him out in the morning when he was sunny are not the things that work anymore. And so we're having to backtrack a little bit to get him on the right page. And it's taking a little bit of effort on our part. But I notice what a difference it makes if we take the time and distract and do other things. And really what's working for us, because he's just crabby. I think about this morning, and he was sitting there on the couch, and I was trying to talk to him. He was like, Mom, don't talk to me. And it was just this huge, huge drama. And so I was like, oh, okay, and
I'm just laughing because I'm like, God, that sounds a bit like me sometimes.
But I need for him to get in the habit, like he has to warm up to be verbal at school, so I don't want him to be all quiet and shut down at home. And so I got to get him talking a little bit before I get out the door, and it took a little bit more time this morning. And what I've had to taken to doing is bringing up really exciting things that I know are coming up and say, that he's got a big Halloween party coming up. And I was like, did I tell you that the invitation came for it? And it's a costume party, and I hear they're giving away prizes, and, to draw him out. And then suddenly he wanted to talk to me. And every morning I got to come up with more topics that are just something that he really, but I'm not going to be able to talk about, so what are you learning in science today? Mom, I don't want to talk about that, or even something as simple as, I was asking him about which shirt he wanted to wear this morning. Did he want to wear this or that? And he was like, leave me alone. And I know that's where we're headed. And I'm going to have to keep changing.
Yeah. It's interesting because also the other classic one mistake is that when children come home from school and parents do the, how was your day at school and what did you learn? And it's the last thing in the world that the children want to talk about. They're just like, nothing.
Right.
Or it's fine,
Right.
It's
right.
And then you often end up with a kind of grumpy parent being like, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I know you didn't do nothing, or they just when really the parent wants to just engage with their child.
Right.
So.
But was it you or somebody else who said that it's just like when we come home, and if somebody asks us at the door, so how was your day? And my husband will say to me, so how'd the show go today? And I go, fine, because I'm already in the middle of something and I got 8 things to do. But if he waits a half hour and asks me after I've decompressed, then I have lots to share. And that I could wait a half hour, which I now do with my child.
I'm terrible. I always react to the how was work, as I just want to be like, what do you think? It was work. It's like, it was work. Don't ask me a stupid question. But then that's
Right.
just me being grumpy because I just got home.
Right. And we're all in that space. We need the decompressed time, and our kids do too. Really wonderful, wonderful suggestions about getting our kids off to school and getting them home
I think
from
just
school.
make sure that, if you're having difficulties, to try and not look at this whole massive problem as one big massive problem, just remembering that you break it down into a sequence of all the different steps, and then you're just going to look at one thing at a time.
Very good.
And try and fix one link in the chain and get help if you need.
Absolutely.
And know that it's a really common problem that pretty much, I think all parents have problems with getting children out the door. I have a problem getting myself out the door.
Yeah, likewise for me, yes.
It's not peculiar to you and your child.
Right, but we can improve it.
But you can definitely improve it.
And sometimes it seems like such a little thing, but the little things make a difference,
They really
and
do.
they add up. So taking a look at it that way and saying, okay, where is this falling apart, can be really, really beneficial. Evelyn, I thank you so much. We'll have you back next Tuesday with more topics, and you guys can be writing in your questions. It doesn't have to be on the day of, but we take your questions and file them away for the next time that she's here. Thank you so much for being with us. We're going to take a break and come back and talk about some of the things that are coming up this week. We've got some exciting things going on here, so stick with us.
Mostly the behavior started at night, but it was invading the day, where he would just speak one syllable and babble and pace around.
When she was a year old, she lost speech. She did never seem to request me for anything, even for food. He told me over the phone that I should just put her in an institution. I was devastated. What's an institution? A hospital. Yeah, isn't that nice?
He told me that it was possible or likely that Ruffin would never be employed, that he would never work productively, that he would not know that I loved him, nor would he love me, nor would he be likely to marry.
There's a 50% chance that he won't be able to talk at all, but if he does talk, he will only be able to, make simple desire requests. I want, things like that. And probably by the time he was 10, he'd be in a home.
Doreen told me that he would recover, and Doreen told me that he would go to regular kindergarten.
I really have a very normal kid now, and lots of normal worries, but not extraordinary ones.
My name is Deli Popola, and I'm one of the creators of thehotspot.com. Thehotspot.com is an online support system for families and specialists who are affected by autism across the whole world. Share inspirational stories, find resources in their area. Hope you can join.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here at the end of the show, but I wanted to take a couple of minutes and talk with you about not only where we've been the last week or so, but what we have coming up, because there's a lot of exciting stuff going on here. A couple of weeks ago, we were able to go to an event. We're going to show you the video tomorrow. A group of young men who, when they were in high school, were part of a buddy program where they were paired with individuals who had special needs that were also a part of their high school. And they hung out and were friends and interacted. And this group of young guys who were the buddies, they were all skateboarders. And so from time to time, they'd be hanging out with their buddies, and then they would say, you want to go with us? We're going to go skating. And the other kids who had the individual special needs were saying, hey, we don't know how to skateboard. This is not necessarily our forte. And it was this thing that wasn't working out until one of the young men said, hey, this is crazy. Why aren't we teaching our buddies how to skateboard? And so they created a small clinic where they could teach them how to skateboard. And when they saw how happy and excited they were and how really enriching it was for both sides of the equation, they decided we need to do this on a larger scale. So about 3 or 4 times a year, they hold a clinic in Los Angeles where they all show up and they teach kids with special needs how to skateboard. And we went a week ago, and we're going to have that video to show you tomorrow. It was really amazing, you guys. It was so, because, you know, it's funny, the skateboarders, they're all now college-age young men, and they haven't been trained in ABA, any of them. But I was walking around saying you should, because you're already doing it in some respects, because they were chunking down the different skateboard tasks and teaching it in these very small elements. So within the 5 minutes, they were having these kids who'd never been on a skateboard before be on a skateboard. It was really amazing. And my child was one of the children who was there learning how to skateboard, and they would take frequent breaks. It was really wonderful. We're gonna be ending the show, and so I'm gonna ask Emily, as I'm talking, to show you all the different ways that you can watch us and get in touch with us. So take a look at those. But then over the weekend, we were at the ARI, Autism Research Institute Conference, and we met a lot of great people. One of the people that we got to meet for the first time was Alex Plank, who is from wrongplanet.net. If you haven't been to this site, and especially if you have teenagers and young adults on the spectrum, or you are a teenager or a young adult on the spectrum, I really want to encourage you to go to www.wrongplanet.net. Alex is going to be with us tomorrow, along with one of the other young men who has worked with him on creating a documentary about autism in France. I am so excited to hear what these young men have done, because just from what they were telling us when we met them at the conference, there's a lot that needs to be done in France. So we're going to be talking with them about wrongplanet.net, and we're also going to be talking about their documentary. I've totally lost my mind for a minute, about autism in France. And then tomorrow is Wednesday, so it's Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy and I have an hour for you just about Act Today, because they're in a grant phase. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. I know that there are some of you out there who are watching who need some funding for some things. You can apply for a grant up until the last day is Halloween to get a grant for the things that you want. So all of that and more, and some more exciting things coming up during the week. But we'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.